All we need to do is make sure we keep talking.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 37 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, Holden, and I'm here today with my co-host, Simone. And today we have finally arrived at the 15th and final part, or 14th and final part, of Berlin Alexanderplatz, which was a West German television miniseries produced and released in the year 1980. It's based off of a 1929, I believe, 1928, 1929 novel by the German writer, Alfred Doblin. It's about the Weimar Republic and specifically the fall of the Weimar Republic and the rise of fascism in Germany. To put it bluntly, I guess it's a portrait of a society in decline. It traces and documents all of the various malaises and issues that such decay brings along with it. And yeah. So as always, we start out these reviews with a brief little play-by-play of what occurred, of what happened in the particular piece of media that we're going to be reviewing and discussing in the particular episode of the podcast that we're doing. So yeah, what happens in the finale, in the great grand finale of Berlin Alexanderplatz, this series that we've been reviewing for 1 to 2 months now at this point, not continuously, but so what happens? Well, the episode starts out with both Franz and Reinhold being arrested, but for different reasons. Reinhold has escaped the authorities for killing Mitzi, but was arrested for stealing an apple and then using a fake passport. So something completely inane and unrelated to the very heinous thing that he did that, of course, has more thematic, dramatic significance to us. Of course, it happens that he gets arrested for a pittance, but yeah. A trifle, rather. But yeah, the fake passport and identity he had belonged to a Polish man who had committed more serious offenses that earned Reinhold 4 years in prison. While in prison, Reinhold develops a romantic and sexual relationship with his male cellmate. And from this, we discover the root of his dysfunctional interactions with women. Reinhold was a closeted homosexual all along. Franz is arrested in the street for being a prime suspect in Mitzi's murder. However, he has a mental breakdown and is eventually transferred to a mental hospital, where an ambitious young psychologist hopes to cure him. The psychologist's colleagues are cynical and jaded and try to shut him down, telling him that Franz is a hopeless cause, a lost case. From there, the episode shifts to an extended avant-garde sequence simulating the hallucinatory visions, dreams, and nightmares Franz is experiencing while in the midst of his psychosis. This avant-garde sequence makes up the bulk of the episode. The extended avant-garde sequence consists of many varied short scenes which represent the inner workings of Franz's subconscious in one form or another. Many feature Franz being punished or condemned for his past mistakes, hostile encounters with Reinhold, angels and demons, and various other mythological creatures and faces from the past, including the Jewish man, Stefan, who we had the conversation with in the very first episode, and so forth. There's one scene in which Franz is in a butchery for humans, one of many wreathing naked bodies on a pile near a conveyor belt, ready to be cut up and hung on hooks for freezing. And the director of the series himself, Rene Warner Fassbinder, actually makes a cameo appearance during the scene, watching Franz suffer from behind a window, alongside 2 recurring angel characters, one male and one female. Fassbinder was also the series' main narrator, provided the voiceover for the bulk of the series' narrations. Another scene involves Franz being hung up on a cross before a nuclear bomb explodes behind him. Many of these scenes transcend the cultural and temporal limitations of 1920s Germany as well. Beatles songs and droning synth tracks play in the background. Modern ceiling fans stand between distorted versions of Franz and Reinhold as they sit in hotel rooms and wear navy blue turtleneck jackets. Nothing is off the table. For the most part, the extended avant-garde sequence serves as a sort of experimental, theatrical retelling of a handful of key events throughout the series. Franz's car accident is reinterpreted time and time again, as is the murder of his wife, the conversation he had with the Jewish man in episode 1, as I mentioned previously. We eventually come back to reality. Franz and Reinhold and a handful of their assorted mutual acquaintances are now in a courtroom in the midst of a trial. Franz is testifying against Reinhold, although the testimony that he does provide is sympathetic towards Reinhold, even at the very end. Franz is still willing to defend Reinhold, whom he still views as a friend for one reason or another. However, regardless of his sympathies towards Reinhold, the testimony that he does provide does end up contributing to landing Reinhold in prison for the murder of Mitzi. Whatever happened with Reinhold and the passport he stole from a Polish man and the 4-year sentence he earned and the homosexual relationship he had with his cellmate at the beginning of the episode is unacknowledged and appears to be either part of the avant-garde sequence or perhaps a moment from Reinhold's distant past, prior to his first appearance in the series, maybe. In any event, Mech is maybe but not likely because he does mention that in that scene he does mention that he did kill a girl, although it could have been a different girl. It's all left to interpretation. I think it maybe, but I'm not sure on it one way or the other. Reinhold is sentenced to. In any event, Mech is acquitted of his complicity in the crime for having helped to bury the body in the woods, and Reinhold is sentenced to 10 years for manslaughter instead of murder, and Franz is able to walk free. Immediately after the trial, Franz is offered a menial job as an assistant guardsman for a local factory. He accepts it, and the scene shifts to Max's bar, which is now empty of anyone besides Franz, Ava, and of course Max. For whatever reason, Mech is nowhere to be found, nowhere to be seen or found. Franz and Ava chat idly for a little while. It is revealed that, and it is revealed through their conversation, that Herbert was arrested. Herbert, who was Ava's longtime boyfriend, who, although she wasn't very faithful to him all throughout the course of their relationship, Herbert was arrested for something and will be serving out a 2-year sentence in prison. It's just Franz and Ava from here on out. The baby they had together has also gone away. The pregnancy has cut off prematurely, likely from all the stress that came with dealing with Mitzi's murder and Franz's arrest and so forth. The final scene is of Franz working his new job at the factory. He does his job well and diligently, but continues to ramble semi-coherently to himself about soldiers and marching. He's doing well for himself, all things considered, but nothing particularly special or exciting has come of everything he's gone through. He is still a relatively ordinary man, although now a slightly more functional one. We are greeted by one last intertitle that reads, Bieberkopf is a minor employee. We know what we know. We had to pay dearly for that knowledge. And then the scene in which Reinhold kills Mitzi is repeated for us again, one last time, as the credits roll out. The ending of the series implies the fallout that will occur in World War II. Franz is not entirely aware of what is about to happen and about the tides of history and what course they will go down, how they will shift. But in any event, that's the end of the episode. Did I miss anything, Simone? Is there anything you'd like to add to my little summary of the episode before we move on into the main discussion?
None.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then Simone, what would you rate this episode out of 10 and why? How was the finale for you?
I don't know where to start and how to rate this thing because I thought that it would be just the whole episode just in front of the beginning when Franz Gannon and all those sorts of things that were drawn into his own mind. I thought that it would be the prequel would be about his own mind, or we're gonna run into his mind and that's it, or he's gonna be insane and that's what the end is. And but something there are some sort of turns of event that take place that I didn't expect it for him to be sane again and to be a functional human being, just what people are expecting him to do. But yeah, I don't know how to rate it because there are different bits and pieces in this one that works well and some doesn't work well. But maybe my initial review would be an 8. An 8. I'm thinking of giving it a 10, but I didn't like how it ends, or putting back the pieces together to make a whole puzzle piece. I don't know. I'm still struggling to get the whole picture, but some picture that I get from it is it's good. But we can get into it into further down into the discussion, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Maybe you can, you can provide a more finalized review once we've talked through it a little more if you're not sure right now. And I would say I'm the same way, Simone. I'm slightly conflicted on what I should rate the finale. Because on the one hand, it's the finale of a massive series and an undertaking that we took on for the channel, right? And as such, I can't help but feel mildly obligated towards it in a weird sort of way. I think watching through all 14 episodes, it really helped me to settle into a more comfortable style of reviewing and commentating. And I'm grateful to the series for that. I really am. But at the same time, if I'm being honest, the vast majority of the episodes in the series were garbage. I mean, they were crap. They weren't very good. And when I really look back and think about it, I only fully enjoyed episodes 1 through 4. That's 4 out of 14 episodes over the course of an entire series. There were 10 that I was either indifferent about or just didn't like at all, entirely. So that's not a good batting average, as they say. Everything else, and all those other 10 episodes, all of them sort of they fall by the wayside for one reason or another. And the second half of the series especially was immensely tedious and repetitive for me, with very little character development or genuine narrative advancement in each installment. I think the series could definitely have done with being cut in half. Either there wasn't enough source material to warrant a 14 episode series, or the director went too far with whatever obnoxious, pretentious vision he'd set out to complete. Whatever the case may be, it's too long, it's too dragged out, there's not enough, it gets very thin in the second half, and there's no reason for it to be as long as it is. It does the series a lot more damage than it would any sort of conceivable good. I really can't see the good in making it as long as they made it. There really is no benefit, as far as I can tell as a viewer anyway. All this in mind, however, taking all of this in mind, all of this into consideration, I think I'm going to give the finale a 7 out of 10. A very average score. I liked it, because I think on the whole, generally speaking, I did like it, but there were certain scenes during the extended avant-garde sequence that just dragged and never ended. It was this weird, lopsided viewing experience for me overall. There would be a scene that I'd really enjoy, and it would be followed by 2 or 3 scenes that I hated. And so for me, it's muddied my opinion on the whole thing as a on the thing as a whole both ways, one way or the other, positive or negative. That, and I think I'm just experiencing the general frustration that comes with being hung up on something for as long as this podcast has been hung up on the show. The downside of trying to review a 15-hour long series is that doing so properly, as in continuously and with as few interruptions and distractions as possible, stifles progress in other areas. I think of all of the other shows and movies we could have been experiencing and reviewing and enjoying, when instead we were just sitting around struggling with this mixed bag and half losing it in the process. Half going half insane whilst doing so. A show like this isn't the best thing to have on your mind for a long period of time, I don't think. It makes you irritable, paranoid, fearful of death. It'd be one thing if we were reviewing 14 episodes of the Happy Puppy Funtime show, but yeah, there you have it. So for that, I'll give it a 7. And as just a finale to the series in general, it felt pretty unnecessary, if I'm being honest. I like surrealistic narratives in moderation, but this one didn't seem to fulfill any sort of real purpose beyond being technically impressive and a somewhat interesting stylistic deviation from the rest of the show. It definitely didn't need to be 2 hours long, and the fact that it was almost felt like some sort of cruel joke to me on the part of the director, as if he only did it to fuck with whoever was stupid enough to arrive at this point. But yeah, I don't know. That's just the feeling I get in general about it so far. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that, Simone?
Yeah, I think I agree on the part that it shouldn't be 2 hour long. I mean, they are trying to impress us to put these different narrative styles and multimedia forms during the time, especially the time during the 80s, because some sort of this is the kind of movement that are inclined during that time, and they are trying to put impressing stops. But I think that they don't need to put too much because um, it might ruin the whole thing. At some point, just like you said, that there are scenes that favorable or we might agree on that we like, but there are scenes that we just wanted to just end, or I things that are really some sort that in my preference are really unnecessary to be into the show or they put into it. They could just pick something something good. They don't need to include everything that into Franz Beaver Cup consciousness because in the first place we've been through it on the 13 episodes so far, I guess. So it might be too much.
Yeah, a lot of redundancies, for sure. But so when you say that the style of this finale was very characteristic of the time in which it was produced, so the 1980s, what are some of the characteristics of that movement? Would you say of that aesthetic kind of style? What are some of the traits that you see common in that sort of thing?
Yeah, I haven't seen movies on exactly the 80s movement. What do you call this? Multimedia movement or some sort of production movement during the 80s. But if I would to summarize it all, I would put it into the 20th century. Just like say, I can see some similar styles that on the silent films that we have reviewed or seen in the past episodes. Just I that's it. There are some they incorporated those the styles in silent films, but I don't know. It just doesn't work here. There are parts that it work, but on the long run, it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe like some of the over exaggerations of character. That's one thing. I don't know, but that's something that's distinctly European. The Europeans they like to they don't really see characters in the naturalistic kind of realistic sense a lot of the time, especially when you trace it all back to the source, the classical kind of stuff. It's a lot of those plays are usually a lot of those plays and art forms and so forth. I mean, they're usually there to make some sort of social or political commentary. So the characters don't really matter. It's not whatever the work of art is. It's not the medium. It's not really meant to depict reality because the people going into it know full well that it isn't reality, and they don't really care about that. They're there to find to arrive at some sort of philosophical or social or political truth or whatever, or to hear out an opinion, or to just watch good dialogue. Just to see interesting caricatures, or I guess like weird again, personifications of certain qualities or things from nature and what have you. I guess just universal forces in some case. Just high minded stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. It has a lot of that sort of classical inspiration, that tinge to it. In this, where you just get a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense, but it's not supposed to make any sense. It makes sense by not making sense, and it's this whole thing where it's like, okay, we don't care about making these characters realistic, and that can be hard to adjust to, because I mean, again, there's a reason why it's not as there's a reason why it was popular back in like the 1600s and not so popular now. But anyway, that's just a little bit of I don't know, it's a little bit of something. But anyway, Simone, what would you rate the series out of 10 and why? So now we're going to talk about the series in general. What would you rate the whole series, the series as a whole, out of 10 and why? And you can change your answer towards the end of the episode after we have a bit more of a discussion. But I'd just like to hear a spitball estimate, how your feelings. I want to gauge your feelings right now. So what if you had to give it a number, what would you give Berlin Alexanderplatz, all 14 parts together as one unified work? What would you give that rate? What would you rate that out of 10 and why?
I'm stuck between deciding a 6.5 and a 7.
Oh, okay.
Because in the start I thought I would rate the whole thing a perfect 10 or a 9, something, because just like I said, there are a lot of first times in this channel, getting introduced to different forms of arts and whatnot, I used to rate things higher because this is some. I can say that it's really impressive, just like the Tarkovsky films. It's really good, and this one it just in the first part, just like you said, that it's enjoyable. You can enjoy it, especially the first four parts. We've been into high spirits and high hopes that something would really happen, or the turns of events will be because it's surprising in a good way. And now in just after the first four episodes, it's not surprising in the way that it should or it used to be. That's how I what I noticed, or if I'm going to summarize the whole thing. Um, if I were to touch upon the styles and the art forms included, I appreciate it. I appreciate because I just like I said that this is something that will prepare us for the future of the channel, or the future review, or what kind of approach that we are going to use, or uh and the likes, I guess. But uh yeah, I guess that things that are not put onto moderation, or things that are not well planned out in the writing or the production process affects the whole thing drastically.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, I think we have very similar ratings for it. I think it'll have to be like a 6.75 for me. That's what I would rate it. If it was just the first four episodes alone, I would actually probably give it an 8 or a 9, because I feel like even those four episodes just by themselves, they sort of tell a complete story. I would accept that, even if it felt a little kind of short shrifty. I would take it over this. I think I would honestly prefer it because it'd be shorter. You'd only be able to, as a viewer, you'd only see the good aspects, the virtues of what Berlin Alexanderplatz has to offer. But yeah. I think the presence of so many bad episodes outweigh the impact of the good ones for me, if we're going to take in the series as a whole. As a 14-part artistic entity, I don't think the show is not very good. And I can honestly say that I'd only recommend watching it if you're willing to binge it all at once, within the span of like 1 to 4 days or something like that. Make it make a week out of it. The last thing you'd want to do is drag it out for months and months the way that we did. But of course, our situation is a little different from that of the average viewer. I think the average viewer would be able to appreciate episode 4 the best, which is the one where Franz tries drinking himself to death in a hotel room somewhere in the heart of Berlin. That episode was like a self-contained short film in and of itself, and it was probably the most balanced episode in the entire series. It had nihilism, pessimism, surrealism, free association, experimentation, charismatic, offbeat characters, all of it, all of it. And yeah, again, something like an hour-long, thing about a guy like drinking himself, like a crazy German man in the 1920s drinking himself to death in a hotel room. That obviously isn't the most accessible thing. It probably wouldn't capture the common sensibilities of the general populace, but general viewing populace. But I would say out of all of them, structurally, in terms of the writing, in terms of how they set everything up, in terms of just the technical side of the writing, because there's a technical aspect to writing, obviously. Just the foundation of that episode is very solid. I like the way that they did a good job of executing it. They had a script, and they took it and they portrayed it. They adapted it to the screen, and they made it happen. Yeah, that was the most. It had the smoothest sort of collaboration between the script writers and the I guess the film the people working behind the scenes on the stage, on the sets and the cameras and the director and the actors. Everything just sort of fell into place. It all worked together in one really nice sort of harmonious collaboration, and I could see it, and I really enjoyed being in it for the hour or so that episode went for. But I would say that the worst things about this show, the series, taking the series in whole now in full, I would say were that would include the repetitiveness of the later episodes, the inconsistent characterization of the various members of the cast. Like, for example, Reinhold's random and abrupt introduction to the series, Franz and Mech's obligatory falling out because the plot needed it to happen, and the bipolar nature of all the women, all the female characters, and especially their tendency to scream their heads off constantly and hysterically to the point where I wonder whether or not that might be one of Renee Warner Fassbinder's secret fucked up fetishes or something. The sounds of the lovely sounds of female agony to him. God, it was annoying. The amount of screaming that was in this was just really fucking annoying to me. But yeah, random female shrill whatever. The best things about the show were the experimental touches of stylistic flair. I would say the characterization of Franz himself is he was a good, well made figure, as well as the evocation of time and place with regard to 1920s Berlin and some aspects of the music. The soundtrack was great in some places, poor and horribly out of place in others. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say about it. There's a weird sexism that seems to be in both the original novel and in the this miniseries that kind of pisses me off, to be honest, a little. And I don't want to make a big deal out of it one way or the other, but it's annoying. And yeah, I think the nihilism overall, it's interesting at first, but it gets pretty juvenile. Just this attitude of like, let's put something edgy in here to shock people. That can only last you so long. After a while, your viewers are going to get numb to it because they're going to catch on to what you're doing. They're going to realize, and what it is, it's not even that it's not even that you've pulled one over them or anything. It's not like you're super clever. You're so clever that you've like, you've completely tricked them or anything. It's more so the fact that when people watch things like that, when they see the scenes of like, animals being slaughtered and stuff, they imagine that that's going to lead to something. That's going to lead to some bigger, more substantial point later on in the series, that's like a stepping stone to something even more profound or even more capturing, even more jarring, even more visceral. But it doesn't lead to anything is the problem. So the whole thing is stupid now. The whole thing is really like, really now it makes it so that the best parts of the series are completely moot. They're pointless because they were expectation. Really what made them so good was the expectation that what was going to come after them was going to be even better. They were a great first step, but the first step of something doesn't mean anything if the last steps are nothing. I don't know. It's like I don't know what kind of example I could give it. Maybe cooking again. If we're gonna do I did a cooking analogy last episode, cooking metaphor last episode. Yeah, I don't know. It's like baking a cake. You bake this beautiful cake for the first few steps of the recipe you do perfectly well, but then by like the fifth or sixth step, you get lazy and you start trying to improvise and you don't measure everything out properly. And then the end result is a cake that, it was looking good at the start because you were doing everything right and you were being consistent with it. And you had a goal in mind. You had a particular vision, a very specific vision as to what you wanted that thing to be. But then you got lazy and you started to rush around. You started to fumble around. You got your grip on that thing got much looser, and with that came, a lack of that same consistency, that symmetry, that sort of solidness, that wholeness. And so you end up getting either a cake that's like too runny or too stale, too dry, burnt, whatever the case may be. It's not a good end result, and that's how I feel about the series as a whole. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Simone?
Okay. Um, yeah, there are a lot of things that we can complain about this, but yeah, I might agree on different points that you told. Because because in the first start of the series, we're in high hopes. We're expecting a lot. Just like you said, you mentioned about this juxtaposition and this symbolisms that are that they incorporate in the first four parts, because those are tolerable, and I think those blend well. But along the way, that using again and again the same style over and over, um, it doesn't work as it should be, or the way that they imagine it to work. Or yeah, I think Getting back to previous episodes or previous shows that we covered, especially Tosca, um, people who showed the people that enjoy that show maybe might appreciate this one because those exaggerated themes are included in this one. Just like you said that some sort of styles might appear to particular demographics, especially the rich people during that time, because they are the ones that only can afford such thing. For example, the operas, just like I mentioned, they are the one who can appreciate it. So it appears to their demographic that in their preference, this is good. This is what multi uh, media forms that are into our days. So that's how it works. So maybe that's how it is in this episode. Some might enjoy it, some might not. But it would be a good thing for some sort of experiment and some sort of experience, because even though there are a lot of flaws in this one, um, this show teaches more lesson at some point. Because of that, I think, yeah, I don't know where I'm talking to. I'm It's quite hard out here.
Yeah, even the bad can be learned from. You can extract it. You can extract knowledge or insight or whatever from a stone. You just have to try hard enough, I suppose. Um, but yeah. I mean, again, it's really not surprising that a lot of like high art is sort of like exclusively, reserved for some sort of elite or ruling class. Because I mean, when you take into consideration, really the whole of human history from the ancient Greeks and Romans on. I mean, it's always been that way. It's like art's a luxury. Art's only something that can exist in a time where, a certain portion of the population is busy doing all the grunt work, and the minority of that population is out, kind of just sitting in their in their houses all day, in their palaces, just dreaming up these little things, daydreaming and idling, and that. And that's kind of why art gets a bad rap, because I mean that's where it kind of generally comes from. It comes from that very sort of, it comes from a kind of skewed. It's a luxury. In any case, it's a luxury. It's not an essential at all, as far as like, if everything got bombed out tomorrow, when we were living in a nuclear, holocaust of some sort and a post-apocalyptic world, it's like the last thing on anyone's mind would be writing about the experience, or jotting down some poetry or painting a pretty little picture of what's going on. It's like that. You would need to be, scavenging for food. You need hunter gatherer groups, and you need all, the real shit, the nitty gritty, I guess, that sort of thing, the very physical and the very raw and natural and earthy and all that. But yeah, Simone, let me ask you this now. What did you think of this episode from a technical point of view? What about its technical merits?
I think I would side again on the side that I'm always on, or how I approach it. Um, I appreciate I just like I said that I really appreciate this show for a lot of different styles that into it, but those things doesn't work out. But I think it's a good introduction, of some sort, because it's not very good. It's not really that good compared to some grand avant-garde works that really works well. But this one, it might be good for in preparation for some sort of reference, which is give you kind enhance your taste when it comes to things. So you might because if you're introduced in the first place with something perfect, something good, your taste might be just thrown at that level. And this one, it's kind of been in just in the middle, or just average, moderate. So the style or how you will approach things is not that high at all. But yeah, I if I'm going to rate it, I might just remove different parts of it. I lose the track of the different parts of Fran's subconsciousness that included in this one, especially the parts where they reenact what happened in the first 13 episodes, especially killing and different getting back some characters that are already gone. But what I noticed, I just noticed is that Lena doesn't appear, or am I not really see her, or I just didn't notice her. I didn't notice Lena, the girl on the first four part of Berlin Alexanderplatz. All the girls are the previous or the fresh one that he encountered. That might be some sort of problem into the production, I guess. I didn't notice her at all. I'm expecting that she's there, but maybe there are some logical explanation into that one. I guess that we can touch on later. But the technical aspect of this one, I like how it ends. I mean, the ending scene. That I got a bit of some sort of um, conspiracy, or not exactly conspiracy. I don't know how to put it. It's not conspiracy.
Theory?
Some sort of theory of what might happen. Uh, what I'm thinking of is might be Reinhold might be put in the same situation of how this whole show works. Some sort of a never-ending cycle of some existential crisis and being an outcast of society at some sort. But Franz is not totally as outcast, but he's different. He's not sane as how a human being is. Because in the end, Reinhold, the scene where Reinhold killed Nietzsche is played again. So it gave me some, what do you call this, hint that something similar to what happened to Franz might happen to Reinhold in if they were going to make another story. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean that's definitely what the extended avant-garde sequence is like. Main, I guess, not hypothesis, but thesis rather, which is that of course, there's this never-ending cycle of violence and cruelty that mankind seems to be fated to, seems to be doomed to a certain extent. Although I would say my personal interpretation of the including that final flashback to Reinhold killing Mitzi in the woods as the very last thing that we see in the entire series as a whole. I saw it as I put it together with the scene where Franz is at the automobile factory and he's looking trying to stop all of the German the Nazi soldiers from marching on, and so I saw it as like the inevitable sort of just occurrence of history. It's like this is all going to happen. I took it on a much I guess a slightly broader scale, a little more general. Just like this is basically get ready. This is the kind of human behavior. This is the part of human nature that led to things like the Holocaust and led to things like nuclear catastrophe and all sorts of awful all the awful events of the 20th century. That's kind of how I interpreted it. But again, every a good piece of art can be interpreted lots of different ways, as they say. Yeah. So, but for me, and oh yeah, Lena. Yeah, Lena was the one major character that we never got to see. I mean, they even included minor characters like I don't know, like the widow that her uncle tried to, I guess, have his way with. And Lena, for those of you who may not remember, was this Polish girl who claimed to have psychic abilities, who was Franz's first girlfriend, kind of, well, I guess, yeah, first girlfriend immediately after getting out of prison. And she lived with him for a while. She moved into his apartment, and they got along for a bit, but they had some problems. She didn't like, for example, that he was reading like weird countercultural like journals, I guess, pamphlets about like same-sex relationships and all these other sort of taboo subjects. She was about to leave him for that alone, but he made up for it somehow. She basically just forced her back, and she said okay, and she liked that. But then she left him after he ran away. And the reason why he ran away was he ran away to the hotel in episode 4. The reason why he did that, the reason why he went into a temporary exile was because Lena's uncle promised to give him a job as a shoelace salesman. And then, of course, like the first house that they went to, the first apartment that they went to, there was this whole convoluted, very kind of, unlikely scenario. But yeah, there's this widow there who who thinks Franz looks a lot like her dead husband. And so then she sleeps with him basically, and she pays him to sleep with him. And Franz brags about this to Lena's uncle while they're having drinks at Max's bar. And Max, Lena's uncle takes this as an opportunity. He tries to do the same thing, but she doesn't like him. And yeah, it's a very uncomfortable experience because he basically blackmails her and does this whole, throws a whole fit and like trashes her apartment and everything. And then Franz tries to go back to revisit with like some flowers and, tries to be, even though he's already seeing Lena, by the way. So, there was that. But, yeah, she slams the door in his face and doesn't want to see him anymore. And it's just that whole thing ends. And Franz is very upset about that. And the implication, there's a mild implication in there that if Franz had been able to have the relationship with the widow, life might have been a bit more easy, and life might have been a bit easier for him. But that was just one of the many things that led to his increasingly gradual decline, I suppose, as the series progressed. And that whole thing led to him running away and Mech beating the shit out of the uncle and then Lena eventually leaving just because Franz had been gone for too long and she had been living with Mech up until that point. But yeah, out of all of the characters, we even get to see Lena's uncle. He comes back. We get to see the widow. She comes back. A lot of characters from the past return. The Jewish man from episode 1. They're all back for a little, for varying purposes, in varying roles. Some of them stay for a bit longer than others, but she was the one person who wasn't there. And so yeah, I would say my guess would be similar to yours, Simone. Maybe it was just a purely production, maybe it was just the fact that they couldn't get the actress at that point. Maybe she was busy, or maybe I don't know, maybe she's dead or something crazy like that. I don't know, but whatever the case may be, she just wasn't in it. And it's kind of a shame because when they introduced her as like a supposedly psychic character, or at least a potentially psychic character, that made it seem as though, again, that it's just another false promise, or it's a lost promise. It's an unfulfilled promise. That was an interesting notion. That could have led to an interesting thread, but they never developed it any further. And so it's pointless. It's unresolved. It's like a lot of the stuff I really liked about the series just never really materialized itself. So I can't really even say that I liked it because there's nothing really to like. If there's nothing to show for it, then there's nothing to be enjoyed, right? So yeah, that was another disappointment I had. But yeah, in terms of my response to this question of reviewing the finale from a technical point of view, like I said earlier, this was the most technically impressive episode of the series. But when I say technical, I mean it in more than one sense of the word, because technically, I feel as though the effort was wasted on a false thesis. There's nothing really driving the massive amounts of experimentation that feature within this episode, at least not narratively. Within the 2-hour runtime, there were really only about 10 minutes that had anything to do with the events of the previous episodes, anything that fit it within the context, within the canon and the continuity of the series as a whole, and that was the scene at the beginning where, I guess both Reinhold and Franz are arrested, and then the scene at the end where Franz gets, with the trial where Reinhold is finally, I guess, arrested properly. And Franz and Eva have the conversation at Max's bar, and then Franz is working at the factory. That's it. It's like 10 to 15 minutes. 10 minutes, really, just honestly. And yeah, that leads to a situation where there's nothing really driving the massive amounts of experimentation that feature in this episode, at least not narratively, because they don't really have anything to do with the series overall. Within the 2-hour runtime, it's like, the vast majority of what you see is it's mildly self-indulgent art house bullshit, BS. It's hard to relate to. It's relatively inaccessible, and when you stack it all up, it's just fucking exhausting, and it's irritating and torturous for the people watching. So I don't have an easy answer with regard to how I felt about the music the camera work or the set pieces or whatever here, the usual criteria for this particular portion of the discussion. But and I have a separate question a little further into this discussion that I hope will allow us to focus on how these technical elements impacted the extended avant-garde sequence in particular. But yeah, if I had to give a general impression now, I would say that the execution of the technical aspects in this episode it was very similar in my mind to, let's say, putting a real working engine into a toy car. Like, yeah, maybe it's cool as a bit of a novelty, but there's no real reason to do it. That's how I felt about the finale as a whole, really. I mean, it was mildly interesting, but I don't think there was any real reason to either make it or see it. But maybe that's just me. I feel like they expended a lot of unnecessary effort into something that really didn't yield any real result at all. And yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that, Simone?
Yeah, I think I agree on the most part that I can see the potential of the style that they use, but it just doesn't work out in the series on the piece that they choose. Because they might, because I've just said that it's been fallen, or it's been, what do you call this, in decline. The episode after the first four is in decline. So obviously there's just a problem in the not only in the production but in the backbone of the whole production, which is the writing. The writers might not be that good because they are trying to rescue the show on and on in different periods. They're trying to introduce different styles in it that might help play out the match the idea that they're putting into. It's just like maybe some sort of dressing some sort of a doll in a way that they imagine it or some sort. Because it just doesn't fit. I don't know what's the right thing, or putting a different puzzle piece on uh, a new puzzle piece. I guess a different. Just as to the sort. I'm not good at representing things, but it just that seems to me they are fitting two different things in one, and which just doesn't work. It works in different parts, but not as a whole, as a piece on most episodes.
Yeah, it's not a necessarily cohesive unit. It's like, maybe one element would work fine in something else, and another element would work fine in something completely different. But when you put it all together, it's just very uneven and lopsided. And I get that they're trying to be offbeat and like unconventional and kind of shocking with it. Like maybe if we put all these unlikely pieces together, they'll form some interesting whole that something that we've never seen before or whatever. But it just doesn't work. It's a failed experiment. I would say it's a failed experiment ultimately. Yeah, I think it's kind of one of the worst kinds of experiment because it's not even like an outright experiment. It's not even something that you can kind of laugh at because it's so shockingly bad. It's just mediocre. It's below average. And that's like the worst place you can be because it's not even interesting. It's boring. There's nothing. It's dull. There's nothing to really even say about it. You can't get anything out of talking about it even. But alas, I guess we carry on. So yeah, Simone, to move into like narrative specific questions now, what was your reaction to the reveal that Reinhold is a homosexual? And do you think that scene was even real, or was it just another part of the extended avant-garde sequence? And why or why not? What do you think about all of that?
To be honest, because it's connected, or it is the transition to the avant-garde part, or introduction part. I thought that it was part of the plan because most of the part where Reinhold is introduced, he's acting like a homosexual at a lot of different parts of it. The way that Franz imagined, or yeah, just like how they put it. Um, I don't know. It's just I want to buy it, but I don't want to buy the idea though. It just there's a connection in it, in the in the real side of it. The idea of it is uh, is real, because it happens to some people, especially with Reinhold. The idea or his character is rooted into his weird relationship with women. Every once in a while, he changes his women and trusts it to Franz or whoever he finds out the friend. So that's the connection. But it's just out of the blue. It's something that it's out of the blue that I didn't want to see. I'm not being bad. Maybe the introduction or the way that they introduced the whole idea affected the whole thing. Especially, let's get back to Meg. How it take a long while before they justified what happened to Meg and Franz in the first place, or what's really the conflict between them as friends. It takes out. They can justify or just address the whole thing in just a good conversation, which will not took a very long screen time. The most important thing is their script or how they will convey the messages or the idea with each other, and that's it. And with this, I think that this is another experience with that they put something that in a way that it's not well what do you call this, well introduced or well turned. They didn't tell it the way that smoothly. It doesn't flow smoothly as they imagine it should be. And especially the noticeable part in this is um, it is just next to or is just in the middle of introduction of getting into this avant-garde or this different state of the main character, which you might not distinct whether it is reality or not. But even if it's not real, there might be some more clues in it that will make the whole thing good or work it just fine.
Yeah. I think they tried too hard to make it like a jarring transition kind of thing. Like, oh, shock! Let's drop this bomb on everybody. Let's make them kind of like go, what? I don't know, it's just like a whole thing. But the problem is that this isn't that kind of series. It doesn't work that way. The audience don't really care about the characters like that. They don't really like them enough to be shocked by any of that sort of thing. They're generally going to be pretty apathetic about them one way or the other, because that's the kind of tone that the series had established beforehand. So it's very much the series is very much at odds with itself. I mean, especially this finale, it's very contradictory. It's weird because again, it's like the tone that they were going for was one that required like the audience to kind of take on this sort of morbid passivity. They were supposed to get numbed and desensitized by all the terrible things that they were seeing on screen and all of the terrible things that all the terrible characters were doing at any given time. In this terrible society against this backdrop of some rotting, decaying republic. And it's a mess, and it's a mess when it's a problem when you completely renege all of that and you go around it, and it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit in at all. There's no reason for it really. It doesn't add anything. It takes away. So yeah, but in terms of how I feel about it, I guess I don't know. I would say it makes sense ultimately. It makes sense. But the narrative also makes it ambiguous as to whether or not it actually happened. And I think sometimes being too cryptic in the hopes of being an impressive and clever as a scriptwriter is a bad idea, counterproductive. Because you really have to make sure that you're good before you do it. You have to make sure that you're good at being obvious before you can be shrewd. You have to know the fundamentals. You have to have a firm and solid enough understanding of script writing as a whole and the fundamentals and everything before you can even think about taking on something specialized and kind of counter like that, as sort of a counter move like that, something like risky and ambitious and whatever. In this case, I'm honestly just too busy trying to piece together the chronology of events and separate the real from the surreal that took place in this episode to really care one way or the other about I guess what Reinhold does in his spare time or whatever. I don't know. But with regard to his characterization, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it does provide him with slightly more nuance and complexity than he had before the audience found out. But yeah, it's not a massive reveal or anything, as again there weren't any major stakes attached to it, but it was still pretty interesting. I'd say there was no drama really to it. Although I will say his audience his cellmate, the character of his cellmate, the actor who was playing him in those scenes, he was clearly dubbed over for some reason. And I think that's the worst thing you can do when you have an actor reading lines during a close-up. You know, it's painfully obvious that someone else is reading his lines over him, and that the audio is not his. And the dub just doesn't sync at all. They didn't get the timing down at all. They didn't even try. And as far as I know, it's the only time throughout the entire series that any actor was ever dubbed. You know, and if they did it before, it was pretty good because I didn't notice it. But the including it here now, it's either pure laziness or part of the avant-garde stuff. But you know, to be honest, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that they just fucked it up a little bit. The people making this series seemed to care less about making it than even we do watching it at this point, at least at times. Maybe not all the time, but definitely sometimes I get that impression. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Simone?
Uh, yeah, just like I said, there's a decline. It really affects the whole thing. Not only maybe they just thought that this doesn't work, so maybe they just try this to rescue the whole thing. But in their hopes or in their pursuit to make this thing better, it just doesn't play out that well. But I appreciate it. I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the idea. It gives me some hopes, or maybe what will happen if their idea works perfectly. So it might be something good, or they might be it might pay the wars that they include in the past episodes. If I were to look at it, but it just doesn't work. So I'm hoping for something. I'm always in the hopes of not only in the good episodes, but also in the bads. I'm hoping that things will get better and better, but yeah, it doesn't. But I think the idea and their effort to make things good, I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so now we move into the main, I guess, the main point, the nucleus of this discussion, because this is also the nucleus of the finale. Simone, how did you feel about the extended avant-garde sequence? Was it good? Was it bad? Did it make sense within the context of the series as a whole? What are your thoughts?
The extended avant-garde scene. Just like I say, I appreciate it. I think that they might. Uh, it just it just ambiguous. Not exactly the whole idea, but um, the episodes of it. The episodes of it. It just there should be some cues that they should give, or exactly some sort of transition, some sort of some cue that they will say that this is the transition to this kind of part or this kind of act to prepare us for it, but it's not included there. So it's kind of that mess up. It's also, I think that's exactly what affected the whole thing at this point. They lose those track of maybe some structural problem, and they encounter some sort of structural problem on the writing, or they just um, didn't have that much idea on how to this how to put together this massive brainstorm idea that they got. That's what I noticed about it.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that it does create a sense of distortion and disorder, which is what they were trying to go for, and that's slightly appealing to take in, you know, as a viewer. But to me, you know, it just the whole thing just feels like the kind of project that a group of like stoned out theater kids at a liberal arts college somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, would come up with. It's trying to emulate someone like Ingmar Bergman and failing. I wouldn't say horribly, but failing nonetheless. And mild failure is arguably one of the worst kinds of failure because again, it's mediocre. Mediocrity is the greatest sin of art. I would say it's like the cardinal sin of art. And maybe it's the sort of thing that requires repeat viewings in order to fully appreciate. But I think the problem is that they made the actual experience of watching it too boring and too unpleasant for that to be something that's worth doing, not only for the average audience member, because, let's not even worry about the average audience member, but for even the most hardcore of audience members. It's, this is some very obscure kind of upper class, again, elitist kind of BS. And it's really what it is. What it comes down to, it's the incoherent metaphysical whinings of a nerdier portion of the elite. It's the geeks among the rich. They don't fit in, so this is what they do to get their little angst out of their system. And I have no time for it. I feel as though I've wasted enough as it is doing all of this for Berlin. But yeah, you can't just throw in a bunch of torture and crucifixion and nuclear warfare and expect people to care. It actually has to add up to something, important quote unquote subject matter and like edgy, shocking imagery, like with the pigs and everything, doesn't mean anything unless you give it substance. That's not substance. That alone is not substance. And so I would say haphazard is the word I'd use to describe the avant-garde stuff in this episode. Haphazard and arbitrary, and maybe even throw in suicide-inducing for good measure, because coming out the end of this very long tunnel, I'd like to take a very long rest. I think I'd like to take a very long nap. I'm very tired. It really wears you out. I'm exhausted, man. I'm exhausted. I don't even want to fucking finish this, but we carry on, I guess. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that, Simone?
Yeah, I think we reached the part that it's not we just like you said, how you put it, it's just we outgrow the whole thing. In the beginning it's good, but as along the way, as we uncover this path or take this path going through Berlin, it's not. But it would be taken as a good lesson or some sort of good experience in the future. Because we always put these things there.
Yeah. And it's a shame, it's like we can't even really talk about that at length. Like we're just making the same points over and over again. I mean, that's how fucking repetitive this whole show was. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the specific question about the style of the avant-garde sequence, Simone. What did you think of the style of the avant-garde sequence? And by that I mean the music, the visuals, the sets, the characterization, and so forth. Is there anything interesting you'd like to say about it, one way or the other? Was it good, bad, etc., etc.?
I might not say that I fully agree that it's good or it's the best thing in this part, but I think to put it into words, I can say that I appreciate the music, especially the harmonica part. But they play that harmony or that piece of notes in different instruments, which I appreciate. In some parts, it's good, but at some part, it's not. Just like how this whole show is. But I also appreciate the second song that that they play on this Edison's music player. I forgot what it's called, phonograph or something.
Yeah.
I like the song. Some sort of maybe to commemorate this stuff. Once I listen to that, I might remember the whole thing. The good parts of it, maybe. So yeah.
Those phonographs, or you can also call them gramophones. But yeah, I like that. I like that as well. I noticed that too. It was cool. But yeah, I will say that I liked how they transcended space and time, by including modern day clothing and music and technology within the sequence. But I really don't have anything to say about it other than that. I just thought that was probably the best part of the whole avant-garde sequence. If I had to take it in whole, There was a lot of stupid shit that just went on forever and ever. Like, I guess if I had to give you specific examples, like all of the torturing of Franz, it's like, oh, he's just getting whipped by. It's like so weird. I just don't even want to talk. It's too weird. I don't even care. Or like the part where Franz had like a bunch of like makeup on, so he looked like a fucked up like Pinocchio or something. It's just like it's too weird. I don't have anything to say about it. I don't care. I don't give a shit. So yeah. Simone, were there any particular moments or scenes in this episode that stuck out to you in a good way? So any really good scenes that you can harken back to, that you can call upon, you really liked? Any highlights in that sense?
There are some. I guess I like the scenery or the what do you call this? Not the flat. The background. What do you call this? The place where the whole scene is set. I like the idea, but the fact that it doesn't work that well affected my whole view of the whole thing, or just some sort of seeing it the whole episode. Maybe I like the part where everything is fucked up, or the whole scene in the subway station is in decay, in some sort of chaos, a post-apocalyptic scene. I like that part, but getting back into the idea that, or the fact that the what happened there doesn't work out that well, I might not agree on it. But if I were to choose really which part of it, but arguably it is in the previous past two episodes. The scene in the woods, maybe Reinhold killing Michi, choking her to death. That's just a good scene. It's some sort of Victorian era painting. I like it, but yeah, it's kind of weird. Everything is weird in this episode. In this, they put a lot of stops in it that doesn't work. That makes it more hilarious, or it's really weird. I don't know why they even put those things. But there's some sort of hopes in it that they can fix it, but it doesn't work. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. That's all I really got to say about it. Yeah, for me it was I think I liked the scene where they were all in the butchery for humans, I'm just gonna list all the scenes that I liked pretty much. So the scene where they were all in the butchery for humans, the scene where the doctor talks to his colleagues about Franz's case and his youthful idealism clashing with their matured disillusionment. The court scene at the end where Reinhold is finally convicted because it was just something coming full circle, something finally resolving itself. So, it was good to see that happen for once. The scene at Max's bar where Franz and Ava are able to have one final quiet conversation, taking it all in alongside us, the viewers. There wasn't much to it, but it was, I guess it was fine. It was a nice little show of something, I guess, solidarity, or I don't even know. And then the ending with the factory and the soldiers marching towards the future, and the final nail in the coffin for everything. For me, they were all pretty poignant, effective scenes, relatively anyway. So yeah, so for me, it's pretty much everything besides the extended avant-garde stuff, like mostly stuff that isn't within the avant-garde. I liked. I just can't do it when it comes to the avant-garde scene. I couldn't. It's just too much, too annoying. No point, pointless. It's like just hot air. So on the other side of the token, Simone, were there any particular moments or scenes in this episode that stuck out to you in a bad way? So were there any like really bad scenes that you just didn't like at all? That you just couldn't stand, or anything, similar to that?
I think the scene where Reinhold and Franz just out of nowhere they just got some makeup of some sort of, just like you said, it's some sort of Pinocchio stuff. It's I don't get it. I don't get what's the idea. I can say that the idea is it's in France's distorted sense of consciousness, but it's just out of the blue. There are some things that they can put into that might not work, but they just put too much of idea, just puzzling it all in one piece that it's messed up. But I can say that the idea might work if they will take this different styles that they incorporate in it and different short films or some sort of short films or some sort of weird commercials that are in trend here now or of some sort. It might work. I like the idea, especially I might not like how they portray the scenes where this manslaughter stuff and where France and all these naked people are getting butchered and stuff, but it might work in a different context, a different idea or different set of what they call this set of values of some sort.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you got a lot of those ads, huh? Like all those surreal ads and stuff. But yeah, I would agree with you. A lot of the avant-garde stuff was very repetitive. And even if that's the point to like, inundate the viewer with the same thing over and over and over and over again, I mean, it's still really fucking annoying to have to sit through the same shit like that constantly for the better part of 2 hours. I mean, God, for that alone, I'd give the episode a 1-star rating. I mean, fuck, man. I think I might be slightly traumatized from having to have sat through it. But I don't know. It's just bad. It's just bad all around, isn't it? I mean, overwrought and with too many false pretenses as to what exactly it's trying to be. And I think it tries so hard that it fails to be anything. It tries so hard to be something that rather that it fails to be anything. So that being said, oh shit, I closed down my thing. Simone, did you think that this was a good ending for the series overall? Was this a good finale for Berlin Alexanderplatz?
Mm. Again, I like the idea, but I just don't like how it ends. Just I think I might resort or I might consider the last episode as or the previous episode, episode 13, as the end of it. Or maybe they just maybe they might include scenes where France might gone insane because Mitzi is gone. There's just few. They might just add some sort of different ideas from this episode 14 or the prequel. Just like you said that it's only 10 minutes is in connection to the previous one, or if they are going to connect it to the previous one, make it might close the whole thing or make it a coherent story at all. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. If they adapted if they just made the last episode like 10 minutes longer and put all of the scenes from this in there, you would honestly get a better final product. But yeah, I would say that this wasn't a good ending for the series overall. Not really. The avant-garde stuff dragged out for way too long, as we've said time and time again, and there was no reward with which to follow it up. Franz gets a lukewarm, bittersweet ending that's now marred by the fact that the Second World War is about to happen, something the original author of the novel didn't even really get time to process before it came down on him and everybody else at the time. I think it's definitely an ending that makes sense for the series. It is fitting for Franz. It's actually, in fact, a little more than he deserves when all is said and done for the things that he's committed and everything, the massive, painful journey that he's had. But yeah, it's too vague to be fully satisfying. There are too many loose ends that haven't been accounted for. Where was Mech in the final scenes? Are he and Franz still going to be friends? Is Franz going to start a serious relationship with Ava? What happened to Pums and his criminal syndicate? How are Max and Mrs. Bast doing? Putting aside the impending war, what really would have happened to Franz and the rest of them if world history hadn't gotten in the way? Where would the fictional universe have picked up from here if it ever did at all? Theoretically speaking, of course. Anyway. Great fiction answers these questions without having to stay married to them, You can plan out a second novel on the last page of your book without ever having to actually go out and write it. It's just a matter of fleshing out your story, your world, but whatever. In a way, it's a perfect ending. I'm about as burnt out as on this show as anything, and in a way, I'm almost sort of bitterly happy that it ends so lamely on such a dud. and it might make it easier to run and never look back, I guess, at any of this. But what I will say is that the last inner title that they had that said something about how like Franz's ending isn't really that. I mean, like the show acknowledges it. They did it on purpose, but they just didn't do it well. You know, they thought they were being really clever about it, but it was just lame. It didn't work. What they were trying to go for, they were trying to do that. You know, they were trying to basically the whole point of the series. They explain it in that inner title where it's like Franz Bieberkopf is just a regular old guy, and we as the viewers we sat through and watched it and got nothing in the end. That's the point of the show. It really is. That's ultimately what it is. It's a big, unsatisfying mess, and it's supposed to be, I guess, but that's not enough. I don't know. They didn't do that right. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do even that properly. You can't just go against the grain and expect to be praised, worshipped up and down, left and right for that alone. Like again, it's like you can't just have shocking imagery or important themes. They actually have to go towards something. You have to put their ingredients. You can't just, I don't know, it's like just eating chips all day instead of putting, or I don't know, well that's not necessarily true. It's like, it is, it's like eating just like a big tub of jelly or something without putting it on bread or without mixing it with peanut butter or doing anything with it at all. Just taking a spoon, opening the lid, taking the lid off the jam and just eating the fucking jam all day. It's like, what? Do you want to do that to yourself? Like, do you really get anything? It might be fun for a little while. It might be, unique from the experience of putting it on the bread, and just eating the bread with the jam on it. But like, ultimately, the jam with the bread on it's way better than just the fucking jam on its own, because the jam on its own is not sustainable. Because again, it's an ingredient. It's a part of a greater whole. It needs to collaborate with other things, and without that collaboration, it's actually kind of useless. Without its partners, it doesn't really amount to anything on its own. It can't stand on its own in that sense. It's just not enough. But yeah, I don't know. Even if it's intentional, I think they still did a poor job of executing it. And that's just their fault. That's just their incompetence. There are plenty of stories that are, again, kind of nihilistic or whatever, like act like this. Deeply existential, deeply philosophical. I would say like, heavily theoretical or abstract. They're very good. They're very good stories though. Concrete by Thomas Bernhard is a great example. It's a novel by an Austrian writer from the 80s as well. So yeah, I mean, kind of a bit of, maybe not really a lot of overlap, but still touched upon similar themes, covers similar territory, and that's a lot better. Thomas Bernhard's a lot better than anything that this could do, but I don't know anyway. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that, Simone?
Yeah, the fact that it ends is a very good thing, or the best thing that it's in connection to the last episode, because it is the mark of something, or it's I'm always in hopes in this, and they're just trying to prove themselves in every episode. They're trying to rescue the material, but it just doesn't work as they planned out. Or do do they really have some plans at all? I don't know.
Well, based on the writing and the direction, it doesn't really seem like it. So there's that. Any last words about the journey of watching the series, Simone? Did you learn anything? Did it help you grow at all?
I think so. I think I've grown a lot. Not exactly in a way, but I've grown. It just enhances our taste when it comes to what approach are we going to use on more avant-garde stuff that we are going to cover in this channel. Or, but yeah, it's preparation. Just like I'm always saying, it's just after the first 4 episodes, we've been talking about the same things in every hour-long conversations that we have, but it's just over and over. This maybe 5 or less themes that we notice in this show. It's just stretching it out and trying to dissect something or get something from it, something good, but it doesn't really show, or it just as is that it is that way. But Yeah, I think what I appreciate this one is maybe the style that they're trying, or I appreciate their efforts on, because it's not a regular show that I might find here, or I don't even know if there's something like the show are included here in the Philippines. But yeah, it's been had a lot of joy.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, the important thing about art is that it creates an environment free, and it creates an environment of that's like, that it's a risk free, I can't even talk, consequence free environment in which the artist can play with the possibilities, and the reader and the consumer, whoever they are, the viewer, the patron, or whoever. Um, they can kind of experience life without having to actually experience it. You don't have to go up and fuck. You don't have to go out and fuck up your own life in order to learn the things that you can learn from watching Berlin Alexanderplatz and watching friends Bieberkopf do. But yeah, I would say overall, first half of the series was great. The second half was like torture. But by doing it, I think I was able to refine a lot of my ideas and techniques with regard to writing podcast scripts. I was able to flesh out my approach to this podcast and this channel and media in general. So that was all right. But I think I'm a lot less shaky than I was when we first began 14 episodes ago, all way back when. And yeah, it was an interesting little experiment to see what would happen if we took on such a massive undertaking for Imperial Tides. Was it a failure? Was it a success? I think we fucked up our review of episode 11 a little. But beyond that, I genuinely think we did the best we could with what we had. Now it's just a matter of finding the best materials for what it is we're trying to do here. And I'll have to place more emphasis on that going forward. The podcast will thrive if we have a range of varying and diverse shows and movies to cover. I also think our format works best for films, standalone, one-off films. Maybe we'll do a film trilogy or something similar before we take on another full-on miniseries or series. I think I prefer the insulated, self-contained nature of film over television for what we're trying to do here on the podcast. But yeah. Learned some mildly annoying lessons from going through this. Won't be doing anything like it again for at least the next 20 episodes or so of Imperial Tides. But yeah, there you have it. That's my final word on Berlin Alexanderplatz. Ciao, Franz Bieberkopf. Ciao. And bon voy fucking age, I guess. Bon voy fucking age. That being said, that brings us to the end of episode 37 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I've been Holden, and Simone's been Simone, and I'm just gonna sign us off now because there's really nothing else to say, and I'm completely burnt out and I'm exhausted. And the second I stop recording this, I'm gonna go to bed because I'm gonna sleep for like 12 hours because I'm just really fucking tired, and my sleeping schedule's all messed up. And yeah, there's good things to come. I mean, this isn't just because everything's kind of shit now. With this episode, and because I'm so fucking tired, I don't know. It's not gonna be like this from now on. Like, this is not the mark of like a new trend or anything. I'm just really tired. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, engage with us in in all the various ways that you can. And yeah, stay tuned and bye for now. Peace.